Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our reconvened draft 2024-2034 long-term plan council meeting. The object of today is to get our consultation document out. We have no apologies. Here we are. The purpose of today's reconvene meeting is to provisionally adopt the draft LTP, long-term plan, deal with any councillor amendments on the consultation document and provisionally adopt the consultation document, deal with any remaining recommendations, and on the 11th of March we will then receive the final audit report, and we will come back just to receive it, and then it's gone, it's on the way. So this is the day of the donkey work, so to speak. I will now invite staff to the table to update us on the additional documents that were published on Friday the 27th regarding the consultation document, proposed fees and charges and infrastructure strategy. So we have Lynn and Peter and Ron and Russell's there. Good to see you. Fire away.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, a very brief little bit of housekeeping at the front of this, just to make sure everybody's on the same page about the processes that we're about to go through, and then I'll hand over to Ron and Russell for the updates, followed by Katie for the CD. It is very much D-Day to do the provisional adoption, especially of the CD. The CD will go to Wellington for what they call hot audit later this week. So the local audit team will hand it over to central government, basically, to go through the documents. That team has been organised and is on standby for late this week. They have a 1-week deadline to turn that around so that we know where we stand. Normally there's a little bit of clarification that goes on during that process. They ask a few questions and make sure that things are as they should be. And then, as you said, on the 11th of March we received the Audit New Zealand opinion. That's not a standalone or separate thing. That must be adopted with the LTP and is published at the front of the LTP so that people have assurance about the quality of the document. So, in other words, it's kind of a big deal. Ron will be talking to you about especially about the balancing act of the CD. We're working to some sort of slightly countervailing forces here. The LTP and especially the CD, which has its own sections in the Local Government Act, it's highly prescribed. So I do want to set the scene that we're not talking about a document here that's free form and we can design it as we wish. It must do a certain set of things under the Act. But that's a bit of a balancing act between the Act, Audit New Zealand. We've obtained some fairly complex legal opinions as well, versus the readability and scannability of the overall document. The Act has a lovely bob each way, and then it says that it must be presented in as precise and simple a manner as possible while meeting a vast array of legal needs. So there's the two little bits of balancing act we're trying to pull off. Other than that, I might let Ron go forward with setting the legal context.
Through the chair, just to give some history to my involvement in this. We got the consultation document, we went through it, we considered that there was some compliance issues or legislative compliance issues. As a result of that, we engaged Jonathan Salter of Simpson Grierson, who I consider one of the most preeminent local government lawyers or specialists in New Zealand. He reviewed the draft, he made quite a number of suggestions. We have basically reviewed those suggestions and we have incorporated most of those suggestions into the draft CD. In relation to the options around property, etc., the implications of those options must be clearly explained in the document. So that requires certain language, which obviously affects the readability to an extent. I'll give you the example in relation to the West Melton Hall. It's 2 or 3 pages. It's in relation to a significant asset. That is prescribed. I accept that it's disproportionate to the total length of the document, but we can't change that. We've just got to accept that that's the position and adopted on that basis. So with the CD, we have to make sure that it complies with the legislation, which is Section 93 of the Local Government Act. We believe that we have got there. I accept that there are some issues around readability and that minor alterations can be made. But in relation to any of the options that you may wish to adopt, you have to make sure that there is enough information made available to the public so that they can see the rates impact, the impact on debt, etc. So we have to be we have a legal obligation to make sure that everything is clear and concise. So.
Morning, Mr Mayor, councillors. So just an update on some of the financial pieces that have you've already seen. A couple of them are highlighted in the memo that went out on Friday, and that was in relation to the parking fees at Botanic Gardens. So in the fees and charges schedule, it had been listed at $4. So that was the pre-GST number. It should have been $4.60, which includes GST. And also there was the hold fees in the library charges that has been removed. It was incorrectly kept in the schedule. Further, in the same schedule, we've noted that the dog fees were in the copy that you've seen. They've now been removed. Setting of dog fees isn't done through this process. It's a separate process that sets the dog fees, but they'll be advertised in the final fees and charges when that's finally adopted in June. And there's also a reclassification of a balance sheet item that has taken place. The only one of those items that has any rates impact is the hold fees, and it's inconsequential. It's extremely minor. It doesn't even move the dial. But yeah, so I just thought we'd, for clarity and transparency, just advise you of those changes.
So just to wrap up, what we've done is summarise the changes which you've seen in the documents that you received over the weekend. This is the culmination of a very long process and quite an involved one, involving a range of workshops, engagements on both the capital and OPEX parts of the LTP. We are open to answer questions at the moment on the overall LTP, and later in the meeting we will come to the section specifically on the consultation document. Mr. Chair.
Okay, all good, all done? Thank you, that's very clear. Have we got any questions on what we've just heard now? And then we will be going into debate and voting. So I'll start with Councillor Templeton and then Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. It was good to get the documents through just the other day on the range of OPEX savings and things that we looked at. And when I was looking through that, and people had given generally positive feedback on including car parking charges at Hagley Park. Actually, Hagley Park, the Botanic Gardens, was wrapped in with some other car parks as well, for example, Napunawai. And I just wanted to check, while we've called out Hagley Park, is it that group of car parks that we're looking at, do you know, or is it just Botanic Gardens at this point?
I'm going to ask Andrew to answer that question if you don't mind.
So what's been included is Hagley Park and the Botanic Gardens.
Okay.
We did explore Napunawai very early in the piece,
Yeah.
but the consequences on the local neighbourhood and the lack of options for people attending Napunawai meant that we didn't believe it was a solution to move forward with.
Okay, thanks. And the climate change section in the consultation document talks about the fact that we have some projects that will contribute towards lowering emissions, but at the beginning of this process we said we would make it clear on whether the proposed long-term plan would get us to either our council and our city targets. And I'm just wondering if we should be highlighting the fact that, in the consultation document, that while we have these targets, the current proposal won't get us there. Do we?
So perhaps we can come back and discuss the consultation document after this section, because
Oh,
as
sorry.
the Mayor said, that's coming next. So this is about
This is-
questions around what was presented, and then we debate the actual underlying documents, and
Not
then
the
we're
plan.
going to talk
Then-
about the
Yeah, sorry,
Then
Lynn
CD.
said that on the consultation document on the whole.
Right,
Yeah,
So I thought I said
yeah.
after.
after.
Mm.
But
Oh,
Okay,
Yes,
thank
sorry.
you.
my apologies.
Yes.
Councillor Johansson?
Sorry, so if I had questions on specifics to the consultation document
Yeah,
or
do
to the fees
it
and
later.
charges,
Yep,
don't do it now?
yeah, later. That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Keogh?
Yeah, one of your first lines around the audit is around, is this easy to understand? Given the size, can anyone seriously answer yes?
Is that a question about the consultation document again?
Yes.
Yeah, could
Yeah,
we?
we'll do that
back-
on
back
CD.
later?
We'll do that then.
Oh, okay. It was
Thank you.
in the presentation, sorry.
Councillor Cotter? Did you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah, I've got one about the CD as well along Councillor Templeton's lines, but how do we measure significance? I mean, we've got to talk about the impact of any decision that we or the public want to make as a result of what they read in the document. And if they come in with something, and they're allowed to, that's not in the document, how do we measure the significance on the level of rates impact, or do we measure it on an alignment with our strategy, or both, or what? And it's a difficult one, isn't it?
It is very difficult. Every time we have an annual plan and you put forward your amendments, it is a weighing exercise, and those matters you just referred to are considered. We also consider the cost as against the budgets for each area of the council. It's also, rightly or wrongly, we look at whether there is a chance of challenge or how high that would be. So there's a number of it's an inexact science in terms of, because there isn't a lot of guidance around what is significant. So it's basically just looking at all those factors that you've mentioned, plus there's other things.
So we would rely on staff advice at the time at June.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
what about if we had, say, 100 people coming in and they wanted things and they were all good projects and they all had a 0.05, but they added up to like 2 or 3%.
That would we would consider on that basis that would be significant,
Because it
just
increases
because of
the rates.
the cumulative effect.
Okay, so basically people feel free to come
Or
in and
material,
talk to
isn't it?
us, but then we would get staff advice on any significance that was triggered at the time.
Yes, if you had looked at the amendments that were put through, and some of them we put down potentially material because of the cumulative effect
Yep.
of the rates increases.
Thank you.
Thanks. So along those lines, when we put forward the amendment in the draft to add $183 million for surface street flooding, should we be calling that out? 'Cause that's significant. It's it's higher than the last Te Kaha decision, for example. It's higher than the consultation we're doing on the Climate Adaptation Fund. Should we be calling that out separately as a thing that we're consulting on? Because that's very significant.
It's dependent on how it how much of the existing budget it would take up. I'm not actually over that one, so
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Sorry, dear.
Yeah, but it's an extra project that we've put in that's different to the last LTP, worth $183 million, which is a significant amount of money.
I'll pass it over to Brent. He may be able to.
To put it in context, it's the equivalent of about 10% of the rest of the Three Waters program. So, and it is the type of work that we would be doing. It's just more targeted to that street flooding. It's still doing repairs, pump stations, flood relief, that type of thing.
Okay.
So it's not a new activity. It's just more targeted.
But it's significantly more than some of the other things that we are consulting on that we were told was the best way for that.
So this is a discussion again about the draft
Significance.
consultation document. And so let's debate that then. It's certainly something that we could highlight and include in the bullet point list, so it's highlighted in there. But let's discuss about that when we get to the consultation document.
Councillor Scandrick, and then I'd like to move on to the debatey bit. Oh, did you? Okay, there's just questions, don't forget, about, not about consultation.
With regards to the feedback from ratepayers on the document, if it came back due to the...
We'll talk.
If there are a number with regard following the fires that we've just had in the Port Hills, and the feeling is, and we get feedback that a majority would prefer to look at climate adaptation rather than just coastal hazards, and to change that vision, would that be a major change, or how would that affect us as an organisation? Was that not appropriate? Yeah, I can ask it tomorrow.
We'll get the chance to do all this in the CD department.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's cool. Okay, good. Thank you. Right. We are now at a point where councillors have the opportunity to debate the draft long-term plan. We will then vote to provisionally adopt the information and the technical documents, which provides the basis for the draft long-term plan, which includes all the carried amendments. Please note the minor changes on the screen to the motion, which incorporates the updates to the documents which were just discussed. I can confirm as Mayor I'm happy to move it, and the Deputy Mayor is happy to second it. I will now open it to debate, and we will start at the bottom with Councillor Johansson and go bang, 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 bang all the way up the table.
Excuse me, are we going to do questions on the consultation document before we adopt it?
This isn't the
This is long-term plan, nothing to do with...
So if you put the other things up first, so...
Can you just reference which agenda we're using in terms of the hub? Is there an actual agenda that has these resolutions in it? And if so, which page is it on?
Hang on.
So just to be absolutely clear, what you're debating and looking at now is the underlying documents that sit behind the LTP or form the LTP. It is not a consultation document about how we consult on those. It's the underlying documents. It's the infrastructure strategy, etc., financial strategy. And
So if we have questions, if we have a question on the infrastructure strategy, when do we ask it?
No.
No.
Well,
Okay.
There has been significant debate on this on previous occasions, but if you've got a question, ask a question.
Okay, just, and sorry, can we just get also, like, just trying to understand with the agenda, because we've got things that were uploaded on the 9th of February, things that were uploaded on the 20th, things that were uploaded on the 20th, things that were uploaded on the 23rd, and we've heard that there's been changes. What is the actual document that we should be referring to for the resolutions that have been put today?
Do you want to answer that, Lynn?
So the original paper set out the overview of the LTP and all the underlying documents, including the infrastructure strategy and the finance strategy. The subsequent documents have updated some quite specific areas, and therefore it is to be taken in the round. So yes, I acknowledge there have been a number of additional documents, but the core of the LTP is as per the original document for the 14th of February.
So we look at the one that was uploaded on the 9th of February as being the one that's got these resolutions in it, as the resolutions we're debating today.
Yes.
Okay. So can I just ask, in regards to the infrastructure strategy, how long will it be before we fix the earthquake damaged infrastructure that we have? What's the time frame that we are setting that out in the infrastructure strategy?
I'm looking to
It's not really...
Should have been asked and answered before now, but we'll have, can we part that, we'd have to come back around that one.
I'm afraid I don't have the relevant staff member here, so I will make sure that that question is asked right away.
Right. this was raised through the process, and I understand there were changes made to the infrastructure strategy to reference the earthquake damage. But I do think it would be good to give the community a sense of what the scale of the earthquake damage is that we still have to address, if that's possible.
Okay. All right, Councillor Moore. You're done. Thank you, ma'am.
Scroll down to up to 3 or 4.
How far down do you want to go? There. Yep. Councillor Cotter. You're done. I just want to read it. You don't want to. Councillor Henstock.
Thank you. I am slightly confused about which order this is going in. I had a question around some of the fees. Is now the time to raise that?
Fees.
I've just got a question around the variance in fees and those things that have increased and those that haven't. Is now the time to raise that, or is that in the next part?
Yes, you could raise it.
I just noticed from the schedules that we were given and the latest information that there was a general comment in the consultation document about what had increased, but when you look at the schedules and the fees themselves, there's actually no reference there to what has gone up. So the average person that actually wants to dive into this and look at this, they don't know what's gone up. And I'm curious to know whether there is a way that people can see quickly from our suite of documents what has actually increased. Because actually that's what people want to see is, how's this going to affect me? Am I going to be paying more when I go to the pool? Am I going to be paying more when I go to the tip? Am I going to be paying more at the campground? How do they find out that in a snapshot instead of having to wade through a couple of hundred pages?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a great question, and thanks for it. I guess we could put another column in the fees and charges schedule saying what it was, where it's moved. But the fees and charges schedule is 98 pages. Like you said, there's a lot of information in there. We do a summary of changes. Again, that would probably be quite significant. As council directs, really, out of those two options.
I'd be interested to hear what other councillors thought about that. But from my perspective, I think it's really helpful. The public need to see how this, because they want to know, how does this actually affect me in my pocket? If I'm paying for these things, what do I need to budget for? And I don't think that information is immediately available to the people who are going to be impacted by these decisions.
This seems to be a question about making sure that when people are being consulted, they can comment on things. So I do wonder, since so many of these matters are about consultation and how we consult, whether we are better rather than going, and I have to check the team because this is their process about actually now looking at the consultation document and then coming back and adopting the whole lot. Is that all right with you, team? Okay, great.
Look, I did have one further question, and that was in relation to the fees and charges, and I'm on page 54 of our papers, page 10 of attachment G, and there was a reference to note that the General Manager has discretion to modify fees in response to developing market and community conditions. So when I read this, I thought that our fees were fixed, but then there appears to be a discretion, and that surprised me, and have we done that before, and has that ever been triggered before partway through our budgets? Yeah, that was a surprise to me, and I wondered whether someone could comment on that.
Which fees were these, Councillor Henstock?
It is attachment G under item 3.
And which set of fees?
Oh, in relation to pools.
Yeah.
And gym pool membership, and note General Manager has discretion to modify in response to developing market and community conditions.
Yes, so we have done that during the time. I haven't got the head of recreation and sport, but that is a common thing that actually, because we are in a marketplace where we compete, if fees go up or down somewhere else and we're going to lose revenue, the head can recommend those to GM to adjust to maximise revenue and use of those facilities. So that's one where they're not set fees that we are the monopoly provider. They are ones where we do have some sort of competition and flexibility, and we want to increase use at the same time as actually getting enough revenue.
That is helpful, thank you.
Thank you. So,
Have a general.
okay, we'll just move things around a little bit. So we'll get Katie and Lynn, please, to do the consultation document, and then we will discuss it.
No, I understand that, but just in the meantime, is it possible to get whatever recommendations you've got up there circulated, because they are different to what we've got?
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. So, okay, we will now invite staff to the table to update us on the consultation document, of which I, once again, am happy to move it, and Councillor Cotter is happy to second it. Fire away, please.
Kia ora koutou. So I'm just going to start with just a quick overview of what we do have proposed with our consultation. So we're going to be discussing the consultation document, as mentioned by Ron. We have some constraints here with legal and audit, but obviously we're very mindful about readability. There are some edits that we are still making to it. It is hard to make that Word document look how it will look as the final designed up document. We do our best to indicate the call-outs, you know, the section headings. However, there's a lot that we'll be able to do in the design phase that is going to make it easier to read. However, it's worth considering too that this is one document, albeit a very important one, in a suite of tools that we have to make information available to our residents about the LTP. So we also have a summary document. So if people just want a quick summary of the overview of the consultation, we're producing that. We have the consultation document for a more in-depth view, and if you want that really deep dive into the details, we have the actual LTP documentation available online, and we also have the Bubbles tool, where people can drill down into the capital and operational expenditure. Now this year that Bubbles tool is also going to have some sentiment feedback as part of it, so people can report back on how they feel about every line item within the capital and operational program. People can choose whether they prefer to view projects by group or by community board, and our governance teams are fully across the Bubbles tool. They're going to be there to support their existing networks on how to use this, and they're also going to be able to create those hard copy documents with ward-based information, which I know that you are looking for. Consultation document or supporting documentation will be available in hard copy and from our libraries and service centres. We're also going to have that large print of the consultation document and flyer. We're working with our library colleagues to have some LTP displays set up, where we're going to have terminals where people can have some support in using the Bubbles tool, and also support in putting in a submission if they'd like to do that. There's an advertising campaign planned to raise awareness about that. There will also be some social media collateral associated with that. And we're working very closely with the community boards, governance teams, to support them in whatever meetings that they would like to hold during the consultation period. As always, if there's a residents association or community group that would like us to attend, we are there with bells on. So that's a quick overview of what's planned. Shall we move on to questions about the consultation document?
Right. First of all, I've got Councillor Moore, then Councillor Harrison-Hunt, and then Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you. Option one on major events in the events ecosystem. I'm just wondering why it doesn't make mention of a sort of key part of this, which is the fact that Te Kaha opens in April 2026 and there would be no bid incentive funding available for the first year of the opening of a $683 million investment, which is sort of key context, I would think, for that item. And potentially even quite embarrassing for our city.
Kia ora. All councillors will be aware that Te Kaha is a venue's Otatahi operated venue once it opens. And there's quite a lot of dialogue in the option about venues Otatahi covering any required bid funding, should it be required, for their venues.
From other budgets, so it would come at the expense of other things. The advice to us in a memo in the last week was pretty clear. It says, Te Kaha, currently forecast to open April 2026, will have no bid incentive funding available through the event ecosystem until 27-28.
So the information
Should that part not be in the consultation document?
Well, that's a question for councillors, but the information that's been provided by Venues Otutahi is quite clear that they will look for operational savings to cover any bid funding in that period, should it be required. And that's what's in the consultation document.
Thank you.
Okey-doke. Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Kia ora. It's more around the wider consultation and in terms of breaking down that document into smaller tidbits, if you will. I saw that you used multiple tools of engagement. The other thing that we know that people love to see are the small layman's terms documents or pamphlets. Are you going to be distributing those throughout the libraries too?
Yes, we absolutely will. We
Okay.
have one of them planned.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Yep.
Yeah, in previous, and some time ago it was, I'll grant you that, councillors offered to go out to the malls, and I did the Hornby Mall, Rickenham Malls, Christchurch South, etc., to support staff with regards to getting the information out and the tools, etc. Is that being looked at, or is that going to be through the community board staff?
Through your community board governance teams,
Yep.
that will be the way to organise that, and we're there to support you with any collateral that you might need as part of that process. But if you do have a community meeting where you need staff to attend, do let us know.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Henstock, please.
Thank you. Can I'd like to draw attention to the challenges to keep in mind in the consultation document, and we've listed them with climate resilience, affordability, keeping our assets to standard, water services, financial impact of Te Kaha. One of the climate resilience stuff is a subject that really invokes strong responses from people. It's quite a divisive issue, people on both sides of the table. I wondered whether there was a rationale as to why we're putting that first, and my preference would be that we use one of the other topics, you know, affordability or water, which are issues that actually unite people. They all want the same thing there. And so rather than drawing attention to something which is going to divide people, is there room, and what do you think about just reordering that? They're all important, but what are your thoughts about that?
So that would be up to council direction. My sense is that part of the ordering was in response to the what matters most. So you'll see in the document in both sections, we've roughly followed some of the feedback we got through that engagement process. So there is a rationale to it. That said, if the council as a whole would like to reorder, we would certainly take direction from you.
You know, one of the strategic aims that we've got is about affordability and deliverability. You know, the affordability is would be my preference, that goes at the top of the list for people. And I seem to recall somewhere, whether it was the Mayor's introduction or somewhere, where yeah, there we are. We know there's still much to do. We're committed to building better. We talk about keeping rates affordable, controlling our debt. So in the Mayor's letter, he's diving into it at the very beginning, and yet it's further down the list when it comes to what our key challenges are. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on that.
All good?
Okay, so the second issue I just wanted to ask, you were talking about having long-term plan displays, and if we wanted them in our local libraries, what is the process for doing that, and have you got sufficient resources and staff to actually support the elected members throughout this 4-week consultation period?
So that will be working out with your governance team as well. We are working with our library colleagues on this one. It could be that we have rotating library stands, and some libraries are better suited to have stands than others depending on the size. So we can make that information available to you separately. If you have a specific request, we can also accommodate that.
So we can put our request to you that we want one in our local libraries,
Yes,
provided
yep.
there's a space suitable
Yep.
for it. Okay, thank you. The other one then, if I bring up the fees and charges now from before, in relation to, is it possible, please, to include something in there in that consultation document where the public can see at a snapshot what fees and charges have changed? So how does it affect them?
Through you, Mr Mayor, just to answer that specifically, just had feedback from the team. Yes, we can do that. In fact, we already have done that, so we'll update the document to reflect the change in percentage and dollar terms so people can see the movement.
So just to clarify, that will be in the document rather, is it in the actual fees and charges
It'll be
schedule?
in the fees and charges schedule.
And so in the consultation document, it will direct people to that for more information?
Correct.
Rather than include it in the
I
consultation
wouldn't
document?
include it, it's 98 pages.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
My final one then is in relation to capital spend. One of the things we hear from, well, I hear from public is around our priority of our spending, particularly in relation to capital, because that's what they see. There doesn't appear to be anything in the consultation document that really triggers feedback or asks for feedback from the public on our prioritising and on our capital spend program. It's a chunky document. I might have missed it, but that was the impression to me, that there wasn't an immediate trigger for people to say, this is where you put your feedback in if you'd like to discuss the priorities of our capital spending. Can you direct me to that if it is in the document? But I haven't seen it.
So I acknowledge the question. I think we would be in a position to add a question specifically to address that. And with the use of the bubble tool, I think members of the public will be able to see how the trade-offs have occurred and how they impact on their own areas. So that could be something that we could actually add into the interactive bubble tool as well.
Look, I think that would be helpful because for a lot of people, they've only got one or two things that they're really passionate about and they want to comment on. So when they look at our consultation document and our submission forms, they need to see immediately where it is that they go to make the comments and to get their point across. It has to be user-friendly.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Thank
So we're proposing that potentially under those sections of our capital program, our OPEX, we could ask a question or a pop-out question that says, have we got it right?
Yeah, that's what we're suggesting.
Okay. Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coco.
Following on from Victoria's question, with the order of projects, how can they give feedback on that when a lot of that stuff's at program level anyway? Like they can't see what the priority project order is, say within a particular program like streets or playground renewals or anything. And I know some of that's going to come to community boards, but actually there is really no way for them to comment on that, like there isn't really for us.
Good morning. I'll attempt to answer that. So, yeah, there is, as you know, a lot of detail in the schedules, but the whole LTP suite of documents is also supported by the activity plans and the AMPs as well. So you do get another level of detail in there that provide the assessment and the rationale for investment in those programs, which gets defined in later years through the activity owners. So they usually have the first 3 years in quite a good level of definition. And then years beyond, they're bulked up into a program level holding account until that detail flushes out down the track. So you do get another look at each annual plan, and you get another LTP in the next 3 years to flush all that out and keep it rolling.
Yeah. It doesn't really answer the question, but that's okay. I don't think it's answerable, to be honest. The next one I've got is, can you explain how the consultation document keeps our options open, or the community's options open, so that when they make submissions about whatever they want to make a submission on, that it's actually something that we can make a decision on that we haven't been able to do in previous years? So can you explain where the document says that? I mean, I know where it is, but can you tell the public where that is?
Yeah, we could add something to...
You're saying that it doesn't do that now?
Option 3, sorry. Yeah, option 3 covers that.
So just to expand on that a little, what we've tried to do with option 3 is to give more of a broad brush opportunity for members of the community to come back with either suggestions or proposals. This was raised at one of the briefings, and I think Councillor Kewen in particular suggested that we offer this option. The reality is, though, in the absence of detailed assessment of implications and rating impacts, it is not possible to actually put forward an option that people will make submissions on unless you've done that level of detail. I'm sorry, that wasn't very clear. I'll rephrase. If, for example, you were to receive a wide range of submissions suggesting that, you know, we close the entire library network as an example, that would not be possible to actually undertake that action without reconsulting, because it is such a significant impact on the LTP. However, there may be members of the public who've got some good ideas or some specific suggestions they would like to put forward. So option 3 opens the opportunity, and you as councillors will be able to weigh up those submissions in light of the guidance and advice you've been provided with, and it would be possible to make some adjustments within the overall LTP before the final adoption in June. So that's the purpose of option 3, and it does allow a level of flexibility that perhaps we wouldn't have had we not put that option forward.
So I've got a number of questions that follow from this. So
Just to clarify, a follow-up question to that one is, my understanding is that normally we get submissions in of people that are asking us to add things to our LTP.
Mm-hmm.
This one is flagging to people, we're inviting them to also say, if you've also got ideas about making savings, put those forward to us. So the public are aware that we are looking for both additional things we can do and additional ways that we can make things more affordable. So it's flagging to people as they approach
both ways.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Which allows us to then do it and debate it.
I've got more questions.
So,
option 3C talks about have you got any ideas on investing more and preparing for the long-term future of our city, and give some suggestions. Is that an open question? I can't quite tell how open that really is, because some things that people might have a suggestion about. What does preparing for the long-term future of our city actually mean? Like, why that particular wording?
I'm sorry, I'm struggling a tiny bit with where's it said?
It's page 37 of the agenda, or 35 of the document.
Yep.
Sorry, I can't seem to find the...
It's on, or it might be the next page, actually. So it might be the following page at the bottom of it.
Is this in relation to option 3, additional efficiencies and savings?
So there's a part that talks about additional options to our main proposal, then there's parts A, B, and then C. Sorry, I've got the wrong pages. So
I'm so sorry, is this the section heading, exploring additional options to our main proposal?
Yeah.
Right, so that is an introduction section to the options that then follow. It is in and of itself not the question. It is just introducing the information that follows on the next couple of pages. And they are the actual questions. But we do think it is, actually, these are things for people to think about and providing their feedback.
So we could tweak that wording if that's not clear.
If it's not where it needs to be, we certainly can,
Yeah, it is.
This is confusing.
Yeah. We'll note that and tweak.
Like, I guess I've got specific things that I put through as amendments that say didn't pass, for instance, and I can't see how within this document some of those may potentially then be able to be brought up by the public and then debated by us in future. Like, you talk about the rates impact of things being clear, and obviously we've had that information through that process about, we've got the answers to our questions. It tells us what those rates impacts are, but they aren't clear, I guess, in any, if they haven't made it anywhere, they won't be clear to the public unless they've been watching our meetings, which most of them won't have. So how, I'm trying to understand like how the public would have the information that they would need for things that are not included in the document so that they could make, does it make any sense? I don't know. Like when you say rates impacts must be clear, does that mean that public submitting must know that if they put forward something that they would like, I don't know, a new library somewhere, say, I'm not saying they're going to, it's just an easy suggestion, and they didn't know what the cost would be or what the rates impact would be, would that stop them from putting that through and us considering it?
Not at all. That would be the subject of staff advice. So the open-ended option, which is option 3, enables members of the public to put forward ideas as to whether they want anything added or if there are efficiencies or savings. So then, once the hearings are conducted, it's up to staff to provide you with advice of if you wish to pursue any of those in more detail. So that at that point, the implications, the rating impact, etc., would be provided to councillors before you make a final decision.
Okay.
Done. Thank you. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. The access to libraries during the consultation period, I've got a slightly specific problem in the fact that our Hornby Library is closing in the middle of the consultation period, and therefore there will be no access to the library to be able to access the documentation and consultation. Is there some plan afoot to help allay that problem and perhaps have a permanent access in, say, the local shopping centre, the hub, where people could have access to consultation documentation through a council stand or something to cover that period?
Can I take that up with your community board governance team, yeah?
Yeah, right, Mark. You good? Thank you. Councillor Cotter.
Yeah, thank you. It's the readability of the document that I'm concerned about, and I'm just wondering, we've got a bit of a hodgepodge in here. Some of the suggestions that are unbudgeted at the moment could be in their own heading, unbudgeted, and within that we could have these options will increase the rates by, and you have a column how much, if adopted, and with your feedback, these ones will actually decrease the rate level and remind people of what the level of starting point is, whatever it is it 12.4? And I think that would help people to really measure what they're looking at. On page 27 you've got, thank you, a balanced budget. Mm-hmm. In actual fact what that talks about is our intention to adopt, continue with our sliding scale of rating for the renewals rather than borrowing. I don't think that should have a heading of balanced budget. I think it should have a heading of how we pay to renew our assets and describe the trajectory that we're on. Mm-hmm. And also at the end you just end up, this will if we adopt it, and it will create a 1.2% saving, or 1.8 in year 1, 1.2 in year 2, we will end up with an unbalanced budget, and I think that unbalanced budget needs to be really clearly explained, that it's not as bad as it sounds. Now, I don't know if you've explained it somewhere further in the document. I know it's 180 pages, but whether it should, if it's got an explanation, it should be right there. So I think that needs a different heading and a much clearer way of outlining it. And I think we shouldn't be afraid to use tables, pictures and tables. And the other thing I was wondering if we should actually emphasise more at the beginning, the year 1 and year 2 hump, that if we can reduce our rates by any means in year 1 and 2, that's what we've been aiming to do. And also, when we talk about impact, we talk about rate impact and debt impact, but there's some things like particularly the climate change areas that we could say, What is the impact if we don't do this? And also, we should be possibly mentioning throughout the document somewhere a bit more often where these things align to our strategic priorities and directions, because that's really how we hinge all our decisions, and I think the public should have visibility of that as well. And I think that is me. Thank you.
Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. Sorry, just small ones from me. And can you just, I heard you say something about ward-based information. Can you just expand on that? I didn't quite catch it.
Sure, that's something that you're going to be able to get out of the Bubbles tools. You'll be able to download that information. Your governance teams will be able to provide it to you in hard copy.
Okay, great. And in terms of the Bubbles tool, which is quite a cool option, will that be available in, say, Tauranga as on the touch screen, so people can sort of go into it?
Had gone that far with it. I'll check what is possible.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Councillor Kewen.
Yeah, so I've got like three different kind of double questions. The first one is who can submit? Can anyone of any age obviously can, but can someone outside of Christchurch submit on this?
Yes, they can.
So you can get a lobby group that's completely unrelated to us telling us how to spend our money? Like, there you go. Like Taxpayers Union or
But
Crazy
this is
Hippies Unite,
something
anything you like.
that in the analysis of the submissions received, you often do receive information that points to how many submissions were received by people within the city and outside of the city, and that obviously then becomes something for your decision making.
Right, so we get that in the feedback that you've got 3,000 submissions but only 300 were from Christchurch or something?
I believe that's something, Amy, I'm looking at you, that is something we're going to be able to provide you.
Cool, and because we never saw that with what matters most, were all of those people from Christchurch?
We saw quite significant ward-based information for you there on that, yes, and given that a lot of that feedback was from turning up in location, I believe in that in the findings from that, we were able to break down that feedback by how many people we heard from different wards and community boards. So I don't think there was a tremendous amount, but I'd have to double check that with you.
It's just handy to know.
Yep.
And then, because you don't want to get lobbied by the Taxpayers Union telling us to be fiscally responsible or something ridiculous. And then the next one was, there was a story that ran on the radio this morning when I was driving in that said for this there was $180 million of savings put up by staff and councillors only took 40 million. Is that correct?
Not a question.
It was in the news, so it might be.
So there were $140 million of both savings and additional revenue that was put forward to councillors. You had workshops in the week of the 20th, 21st of November. We received guidance from councillors, and where there was a 2/3 to significant number of councillors supporting those options, and they were both savings and additional revenue, those were built into the CE's recommendations, which were then presented to council before Christmas. So that's the basis on which those figures have been established. Yep.
So it's 140 and...
It was I'm going to look at Russell. I think it was 180 million and then 40 million, but just bearing in mind that a number of those proposals were conceptual. So the question we posed to you at the time was, are you willing for us to progress and explore these further? So it wasn't a definitive, it was, these are ideas and options. We can take them further if you indicate you would like us to do so.
So then going back to Councillor Henstock's point around affordability being at the top of the list, if people get a little vexed about the whole jump in their rates and they go, look, affordability for me right now is the biggest issue in the world, I want to know what the 180 looks like. How do they find that out? Because they might want to submit on that. How do we be really clear about these were the things that were in that list? Because I think the public need to see it.
So what we would need to do is make a number of those items had either commercial staffing implications. So what we would need to do is consider carefully what the impact of that would be.
Yeah, even if it was just at a headline level, so and it's findable on our website, that people can just go to it and go, oh, right, okay, so, and tick that, because I know some, I'm not going to say them in here in case they don't go out, but that would be good too, that the public get to see that, so they can have a say. And then finally, I note that in here it says, on the last handout, recommendations 6, 7 and 8. In 8 it's got public notices are taken out in the Star, in the Press and the council's website. So is that the only paid advertising we do?
Absolutely not. No,
So
that
we
is
do
just the legal requirement. We have a full
Right.
advertising campaign that supports that. That is just the
And
legal requirement.
where's that campaign taken out?
Where is it taking us?
Yeah, obviously we use the Press and the Star,
Yep.
and I've heard us do radio before. Do we do online platforms now, like
Yes,
Chris?
we do.
So do we advertise on Chris Lynch Media?
I haven't got that level of specificity with me.
Because that's
just
got like 218,000 followers or something.
So I can definitely look at that, but we do have online as part of the advertising campaign.
Right, yeah, because especially as we're trying to reach more younger people and a more diverse audience now, that there's other forms of media.
Sure,
Cool, thank
absolutely.
You.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
No.
I mean, the question's sort of been asked. We discussed this a couple of weeks ago. What do we need to do to have a list of potential savings for the public to see? Because it's going to be really tricky to expect the public to come up with ideas, and there's already been a number of savings that we've ruled out, which we spent a matter of mere minutes going through to give guidance on. As councillors, we spent very, very little time actually going through savings, and they were ruled out. Staff put heaps of time into them, but us as councillors spent very little time. What do we need to do to get a list of potential savings in there? Because I don't understand otherwise how we're going to get submissions that are able to really give us a steer on what the potential options are. Otherwise they're having to use their imagination, and we've already got this list of things that give us a pretty good start in getting to some savings. How do we get the list in this document? Because they need to be there.
To enable that.
Yeah. Well, so this was flagged a couple of weeks ago, and some advice was going to come back to us about what's possible.
So that is what the option 3 is. My understanding is the legal advice is that those things that were put up were not sufficiently scoped in terms of their actual cost and their actual implications to put as options in this document. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. If I can just read from the advice that we received on this matter through the chair. So the two questions that we asked were, what is the extent of the council's discretion in responding to submissions and in decision making generally at the time of adoption of the LTP? That was the first question. Second question, what steps can be taken to maximise the council's responsiveness to submissions within the constraints of the law? So the answer to question 1 was the council must give due consideration to submissions received, but must make its decisions informed by all relevant considerations. These include the statutory requirements of Section 101 of the Local Government Act. There are material, legal and audit risks if decisions are made through consultation that are outside the stated scope of the consultation. So that means that we would have to have a lot more detail around each individual option. So, and that in turn means rates impact, debt impact, etc. The description of the major project proposals in the CD must include options and their implications. So again, that's the information that we would need and we don't have. The more comprehensive the options content, the greater the scope for the council to adopt any one of them without further consultation. So at this stage, we don't, as I understand it, of those 140 millions of savings, we don't have that level of detail.
So that limits our ability to make the savings. So is there anything preventing us from putting that list of savings in the consultation document?
Yes, extent.
Yes, there is, because we can't guarantee the information that we're putting in there is accurate.
Yeah.
Because they're not scoped out. We don't talk about the impact or levels of service. They were rough guesstimates. They weren't actually precise figures. So that would be misleading the public if we put those in.
Is there anything preventing us from putting them forward without the dollar figures that we couldn't guarantee, but there's still potential ideas that can be investigated further and come with a potential saving? Is there anything preventing us from doing that?
It's because, as Ron has said, the legislation's very clear. Is if you put something forward, you must talk about the implications of it. And we actually haven't scoped out the application. So the legal advice we've got is that the option and description there is broad enough to capture some things, but actually listing out things as suggestions without their implications is a step too far.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Harrison-Hunt.
Kia ora. I just want to refer to the AllVis tool and just flag something, and I'm just wondering where we're at with that. Andrew did talk about potentially moving things from program level into that AllVis tool around parks and communities if there is anything. There's currently zero budget for it, so I'm wondering if we can move some of the things from the program level into that capital program for the public to be able to talk about.
That Andrew?
Yeah, the team are working on it, so that, I mean, obviously the public are going to have to be able to access so I'm looking at Katie.
Yep.
I presume there'll be a link in the document so they can access that information.
All we do is pull down the spreadsheet and load that information up into AllVis. So if that information is available in the spreadsheet, it is available in AllVis.
Okay, cool. No worries. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peters, please.
Thank you. This is sort of along the similar lines, talking about the likes of the AllVis tool. This is all good and marvellous for those of us that are digitally savvy and have access to that sort of thing. But how do we cater for those that are, technologically challenged and don't have access readily to internet and that sort of thing, to be able to really drill down and find what they need to be able to consult for this?
So all of that information is available from libraries and service centres in hard copy. So, and we also have information, we have numbers in the back of the consultation document where people can call. We have, on many of an occasion, made documents available to members of the public when they've called and asked us for them. So if digital is not your thing, you have the hard copy documents there and you can drill down into them as well. Yep. It's just another way of making the information available that suits as many people as possible.
Very good. And I guess with that, I'm thinking in, say, some of my communities where, one, we've got the library closing, but then you've got other community organisations and centres that they could perhaps sort of team up with, and could we look at engaging with those more localised community access points, like I'm thinking 126 on the corner perhaps, as an outlet point where we could have better access for that particular community into there.
So that's something that I'd like to take up with your governance team, to see what they might recommend for your area.
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Templeton, please.
Kia ora. A couple of things to clarify. There's been some confusion in the past on past long-term plan and annual plans when there's been operational savings put forward by staff, and some of the conversation has been in the public that these were things recommended by staff. But can we just clarify that these aren't things in the OPEX list that were recommended by staff? They were options that we could explore further if we had an appetite to, but they weren't necessarily. So some of the commentary around them was that it would be unsafe, for example. Switching off the streetlights in the middle of the night was one of the options. So when we're looking at the $181 million worth of savings and additional revenue, there are clearly things within there that weren't ever going to be something that we looked at seriously as a saving. Is that right?
So you are correct. What we put forward was a range of options which came through from the entire organisation, because the, if you like, the direction was, are there efficiencies and savings that could help council address the affordability issue?
Yep.
And so a number of stones were unturned to identify, could we do this? But as you point out, in a number of instances, it was not, there were implications that
Yeah.
were not recommended. So the way in which that came together was with the CE's recommendations towards the end of last year, where we actually put forward those options which had received the support of the bulk of council and made it very specific, and there was a 30-page document which went into the pros and cons of the options that had been decided to be brought forward.
And so while there were the sheets up on the walls with just the headline kind of option, councillors also had sort of big A3 printouts with the actual implications of some of those as well.
Correct,
yeah. So fully closing all, libraries, all of those things that would have been significant savings, clearly.
Yep.
But they weren't recommendations from staff. They were just.
That's correct. So
if
we
you
were
wanted to save money.
advice to you on what the implications would be at a high level.
Yeah. Okay. And so when it comes to climate change, my question from earlier that was mistimed. And so we've as an organisation based on community feedback, we set targets of becoming net zero as an organisation by 2030 and halving the city's emissions by 2030. At the beginning of this process, we said that we would try and be as clear as we could of whether the proposal would get us to those targets or not. And I'm just thinking that we should be probably putting something in the consultation document that makes it clear that while we are doing some work, and it will help, that it won't actually meet those targets.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing I can add is within the next 2 weeks there will be a report on the district's emissions and the progress towards those targets. So that will be in the public domain at the same time as we move to consultation.
Yeah. And in the water supply section, it looks like it's kind of skirting around the edges of saying we're doing some things, but we're mostly going to be, responding to stuff. Do you think we should be making it clear that actually, while the level of service target has changed, we're not likely to be meeting it with current resourcing? We're putting in what people think is an affordable amount for water, but not necessarily enough to improve our water supply.
So I'm going to ask the Head of Three Waters to address that, please.
Unfortunately, Councillor, until we unearth some of the problems on it, I wouldn't be able to say hand on heart whether the funding improves or doesn't improve, because as we find leaks, some of them are quite significant and will be improving our current status. I understand what you're saying, but it's so hard to quantify as we continue through our leak detection program.
Okay. But we're currently proposing to put $30 million less on our water supply program than we were planning for the same period in the last long-term plan.
Again, I understand what you're saying, but until it's a matter of whether we can better target those repairs for better results, but we're comfortable with the deliverability and affordability of the program as it is at the moment.
Okay. Could you deliver more on drinking water if we were spending slightly less on stormwater? So it's usually lumped in together, that whole three waters deliverability, being that drinking water sort of keeps our sitting going.
The thing that affects most in terms of the stormwater is around consenting, and the flip side of that is with our piped assets, it is relatively easy over a number of years to ramp up the program. Not a huge amount all at once, but I believe that we are already increasing back to previous year's levels in year 1 and 2. It is building again. We can, with the way that we're delivering the programs now and want to continue to in the future, we believe we can increase the pipe network, but it relies on getting that pre-investigation work done first. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. So short answer, yes, we could deliver more, but we have to do the pre-investigation first.
Okay.
Yeah,
not helpful.
You're not comforting, not comforting at all. So the balanced budget section, sort of back to the front there. do we need to make it, one of the balanced budget sections, sort of coming back to Pauline's point, makes it clear that deferring rating for renewals means that we have to borrow an extra $83 million over the 10-year period. Do we need to make it clear that we wouldn't get any extra work done on renewals for that $83 million? So it's just a different way of, we're just spending more but getting the same amount of work, is that right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, that's exactly right, councillor. So yeah, we can, I guess, move that wording to make that absolutely clear. We're not
So I'll
stopping
put
the
an
work, we're only
amendment through.
changing the funding of the work.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Fields, that'll be you.
I'm going to ask a stylistic question, if I may. Is that all right? Just on the document. Buckle in. So, just on the donut charts on pages 17, 18, and 19 of the attachments. Are we there? Yep. What are we trying to show there? Because we've got three charts saying slightly different things, and one's an amalgam of the other. Like, I mean, I'm going to just lay my cards on the table. Donut charts are just not very good, and they don't really tell us much, and we don't have the dollars. And you could turn all of that stuff into one chart probably if it was a bar chart, not a column chart, a bar chart, slightly different. Don't even get me started on lava charts. So what I'm saying is, like, can we sharpen up I mean, because what we're trying to do here is convey something very quickly to the reader, and I don't think that this is conveying much to the reader. We want them to be able to digest information quickly. There's no dollars on there, so they go, oh, okay, well, we spend 25% on Three Waters and operationally, and if you want me to mock up something, I'm more than happy to do it.
Thank you. Look, we have previously used donuts. That obviously doesn't mean to say we need to slavishly follow that in the future, but we have found them quite a useful tool for getting people to see at a glance, proportionately speaking, how much we're spending where. So if it is of use to us to add in the dollar amount as well as the percentage, we absolutely can do that. Now, they look a bit of a dog's dinner up there, but that is not how they're going to look up in the designed document. It's just the nature of what we're working with. But if you look back on any of our long-term plans and annual plans, you'll see that the information is much clearer in them, and the colours obviously work a lot better as well. If you would like us to add in the dollar figures, then that's something.
Well, I'd like to see the dollars, but like the colours are all inconsistent, and
yep.
But like my contention would be though that, like, if you're trying to show proportionality, the best way to do it would be with a bar chart, not with a donut chart, because you just can't see relativity very well with a donut chart. I mean, that's like in all the research of like stuff. Yeah, but like
we can consider that.
Well, I'm really sorry that I'm trying to convey information to the citizens of Christchurch, Pauline, but it's important.
Okay, right, moving right along. Thank you. The day is young. Councillor Barber, please.
Thank you for this. Obviously, this is the first time I've been through the LTP process. I used to think I was intelligent before I started this, but anyway, I just wonder if you could provide some kind of context. I mean, obviously, we're very constrained by legislative requirements to, put all the information out there. How does this compare to previous years, like the volume of information you're putting out in a consultation document?
So, as a comparison with the last LTP, it was a 53-page Word document. Right. This is currently at 41. I know that you consider this large, but it was larger last time. And as Ron will tell you, much of what we have to include there is legislatively required or required by audit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. I can give you a further example. In 2015, it was 91 pages.
Okay.
That was an extraordinary situation because that was the first LTP after the earthquakes.
Yeah. So we're improving, basically.
It's really trying to bring down information.
Obviously, this is a key way to engage with the population. How have the response rates tracked since the early days? say 2013 after the quakes, as you say. Do you have any context for that?
I can't speak to that
Saying
specifically.
it's flat, it's been pretty flat, is that
Really
right?
consistent.
Consistent.
But yeah, could you give a sort of a number?
In the
Because
thousands, you mean?
Sorry?
How many submissions we received?
yeah,
1 to 2,000?
1 to 2,000. So 1 to 2,000 people engage out of a population of around 400,000 is less than 1%. I mean, is that acceptable? What's occurring in other cities? Do we know anything about the context and the feedback in other cities at all?
Yeah.
We'll just invite Amy, who's a head of monitoring research.
I like to think it's because 99% trust us to do the job.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it's much the same in most of the cities. We were actually just having a conversation with Auckland last week about them having exactly the same challenges that we do around engagement and hearing from diverse people as well. So it's not just an us thing, it's an everyone thing.
Because I mean, the question is really is what's acceptable. I mean, are we going to accept that the input we get through going through the legislative process of the opinions of less than 1% of our population, and we're going to base what we do on that or feedback? Because I was looking at the figures for what you told us matters most, 4,000 people, that is kind of roughly 1% of the population, is directing what is important to us, which is, we all know that sample size, makes a huge difference.
So, to speak to the sample size?
Yeah, to give you a little bit of context, a representative sample for Christchurch City is 770. So if we sample it properly, we can get a representative sample within 770. So the focus is probably more on who you're hearing from and diversity as opposed to overall numbers.
It's also useful to consider that some of those submissions are from individuals, some of those submissions are from organisations that represent a number of people. And so while it is a submission, it also could reflect a significantly high proportion of the population. A residents' association, for example.
Yeah, and we all know that residents' associations are fairly representative of their communities. Yeah.
So if
I
I
guess-
could,
Sorry?
so if I could just add something. It's only one of the things that we look at.
Yeah.
We're required under Section 101 of the Local Government Act to also manage, the council is required to manage its revenues, expenses, assets and liabilities, etc., in a prudent manner. So that's a consideration you've got to make on top of the amount of consultation that you may get. Make adequate and effective provision in its LTP and annual plan to meet the expenditure identified by your long-term plan and to meet the funding needs that you consider as necessary. So there's a lot of other considerations over and above what we get in terms of consultation that we have to consider.
Yeah, look, I certainly get it. I mean, as an outsider coming in for the first time at a somewhat advanced age, I see the problems that you face, and it just seems incredible that we base a lot of our decisions on feedback from a very small number of people, Anyway, thank you for answering those questions.
Yeah. Now, to ask someone with a more advanced age, Councillor Scandrett, please.
No, actually, I'm going to hold back to the debate because I'm finding this fascinating.
Okay, goodie-o. Councillor Kewen?
Yeah, so just a quick question, because it was raised before. Mary said about knowing the implications of something to legally be able to have it. With the Climate Change Fund, do we know the implications of that enough? Because it doesn't say what the money's spent on. And the other one that would be the financial, that does it not work out better to pay down debt than put money away when interest rates are high? Then you have more money longer term that way. That's what every banking advisor says, but we might be different.
So in relation to, this is option 2, And it is a specific option that is being consulted on. The purpose of the fund, as it states, would be to address adaptation issues as they're identified by the engagement processes, and there is a specific rating impact. You are correct that this will be a trade-off that councillors will need to consider as part of the final adoption.
Right, so that's on the second part of the question, but the first part is, aren't we meant to know what we're going to spend the money on and how much that is to get what we want? That's how we do a budget.
But we do have program level funding for things without going into the specificity of detail. So it's tagged generally to adaptation, not down to the number of stop banks built or anything like that. It's just generally at the program level, and I believe there is strong precedent for that.
So we could particularly go, when we're talking to our lawyers and also to audit, actually just ask them that they do think that that is clear enough around the implications.
Yeah, just as long as it does matter, because normally you say, you know, you want to build a new super library in town, it's going to be $100 million. Let's start putting away money. You know what you're in for. Whereas, yeah, and I think I've heard Sam mention a couple of times, and he can speak to it or ask questions around it of doing it a different way.
Okay, good. Thank you, Councillor Coker.
I've got one here for Brett. Hi. Just good timing there. I was wondering, with the water infrastructure renewals, how is the public able to make a submission in a knowledgeable way? Because we've got the information there, like the graphs of how much we're spending on renewals, but there is no, and it says also, as Sarah pointed out, that we are planning to do some renewals, but we are definitely going to be doing reactive pipe replacement, wait till they burst in some streets, and that's actually what we're planning on doing. But how do they know how much we would actually, and how do we know, because we don't either, how much we would actually have to put on budget if we were actually planning on being proactive? Because that information has not been given to us anywhere that I can tell, unless it was in the initial LTP briefing that we had right at the start of this process, because those numbers were different.
As I said earlier, Councillor, it's a bit difficult to be completely proactive in terms of those leaky pipes and things. I recall at a previous meeting we discussed getting down to sort of best practice at something like 10 to 15% leakage rates down, which was a target that Councillor Templeton was proposing. Now, to get to that, it's a bit hard to know. I mean, our pipe assets are all buried, and some of them don't show until they become major leaks. That's why I'm not able to give you a specific answer as to how much is it to fix this thing. We are reviewing the way that we calculate our water losses at the moment, believing that the figure may actually be better than the very sort of crude measure that we've had in the past. That's why I'm suggesting that we continue with our current program, and we will still have to have a reactive amount in the meantime. There are still going to be pipe breakages. There are still going to be repairs which aren't capitalisable, so will have to be done under maintenance anyway. And continue to review the overall program on that 3-year basis, on that 3-year cycle with the LTP, to see whether we really are making headway or not. At the moment, we believe we are making headway. There was slightly less in volume, there was slightly less water loss last year, even though percentage-wise it comes up with a strange figure because we pumped less. So we believe we are making headway. I can't say if you put in an extra 50 million or an extra 100 million we would get ahead. Hand on heart, I couldn't say that. Because we don't know until we do the leak detection, until we do the cammering, and until some of these major leaks present themselves.
So is there a point in the future when we would have enough knowledge? When are we aiming to have the right amount of knowledge to be able to be accurate in what we're aiming to do? And yeah.
So as we go through, and there's a couple of initiatives at the moment regarding flow meters on the reservoirs, smart meter installations, which you're already aware of, which will give us real-time information, going through and balancing the different zones. You're aware that there's been a long-going project to look at the Rawiri zone in terms of water loss and leakage and smart meters out there. As all those things come to fruition, before the next LTP, we should have a much stronger number. We are looking currently, though, at getting a better water balance figure to you rather than that crude unaccounted for loss figure, and the team are going to bring that back to council probably within a couple of months.
Okay.
Potentially, we could push it and try and get something for more information prior to you debating the final LTP.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll just ask.
I've got another question too.
You follow it. You go, Phil.
Oh, it's on not to do with this. It's the climate change stuff.
I'll just ask a wee question to Brent. Brent, you sort of touched on it before. We know what we pump out of the ground. We know what we deliver to people, and the gap in the middle is lost or leak. Now,
or unaccounted
and
for.
That's the word I'm looking for. So what we've had in the last couple of weeks, a shed load of unaccountable water getting taken up in the sky by helicopters and dropped on Port Hills. That could loosely be, in your figures, the way you're doing it, that could be, it's unaccounted because it's not. We know what we've pumped, we know what we've delivered. That also becomes nearly, oh, that must be a leak, and it can be lost water. So we've got to, as you say, you're looking at doing that. The other thing I look at is, I know it's very well for a computer to say, oh, that pipe in that street is so many years old it needs replacing. It may not be leaking, but there may be one that's a lot younger that is laid in ground that's not quite as good in different parts of town, and it's breaking and leaking like asbestos pipes. I know will crack on poor ground and leak like crazy, but what I think you're suggesting is concentrating on looking for the leaks regardless of how old the pipe is, and not just replacing the pipe because a computer says.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. We're really trying to target what we're doing and get those big wins. That gives us the gains in terms of our program. It also gives us the gains in terms of our forward growth provision in terms of what we need to pump and do we need more pump stations, that type of thing. So, yeah, it's not just a straightforward thing. You're absolutely correct in terms of the types of pipes. Surprisingly, some of the younger pipes of a particular make in the late 90s are failing quicker than some of the old asbestos concrete ones. So sometimes you just don't know, and we just have to keep systematically working towards that point where we can come back to council and say, hey, we've got a much better.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Coker, I butted in. You had another question.
No, that's good. On the climate, there'll be a lot of submissions from people about climate change, I imagine, and mostly they'll probably be very disappointed, I imagine. How can, again, the public make a submission to us in a knowledgeable way with information and facts to point out like which projects we should or shouldn't be doing, or how they could be changed or tweaked across anything that we do, capital, OPEX, anything. How can we can't do it, and how can the public submit on that knowledgeably when we haven't really got any information on which projects cost the most carbon emissions, which operations cost the most carbon emissions, all of that information. And I know that we're working towards that, but when are we really going to have, again, that information, knowing that we've got 6 years to sort our stuff out? And
yeah, well, I can only comment for Three Waters in terms of this, because there's climate impacts, and yeah, we do happen to be one of the biggest contributors with the wastewater treatment plant. But I don't think you could accurately look at progress on climate change through a dollar lens, because
That's right.
everything we do should have climate change factored into the planning from now on.
Correct.
So,
But we can't see it
and-
at the moment, and it mentions it in the document. It mentions in the document that we take it into account in some way in all of our projects and planning, but we are unable to see that.
I'm not sure that I could comment on that in terms. I mean, I know some specifics where, but again, it's not visible to you. Some specifics in terms of, for example, renewing generators at pump stations and making sure they're energy efficient and clean burning and that type of thing. But yes, you are correct. You wouldn't be able to see that, but maybe someone else may be able to comment on reporting back.
Potentially come back to council with advice about progress to being able to report against all of that.
Okay. Rightio. You've got a few here. Oh, right, you go then.
Just quickly a question on the page 14 when you mention inflation, and you mentioned that we use the bureau, but is it possible to put a figure in there, a number? Something like 4.7?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there's multiple numbers used, councillor, for different categories for different years. So there's not a number. I mean, we could put a table in, if you like, of the weighted average that we use across the years. But
Some sort of guidance would be good,
okay.
if you could.
So, like I said, the best I can offer, I think, would be a table of the weighted average across the years. Like we use a number of different variables for different cost components for different years.
Do you mean CPI? Or they use the bureau rather than the CPI.
Well, Bureau gives multiple indices to use.
Because I think that is something that a sector of the public would be very interested in, how we are budgeting for that.
Yep, good as gold. We'll create a table.
Yeah, because I know, the insurance inflation is contained within what we've budgeted for, isn't it?
That's correct. Like I say, it covers multiple cost elements.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
And just the other thing is, coming back to the climate change, on page 18, you say at a high level we're spending 380 million over 10 years on projects that have a direct impact on climate change mitigation, public transport, major cycleways, urban forests. Is it possible to have an indication on any of those numbers if they have been reduced in the LTP? Just to give the public an indication, was that the budget that we had in the last LTP, or have we reduced it? And then just one other thing was, I know that the Mayor's mentioned it in his introduction, but it could be quite good to put in the heading, the challenging environment that we're in, and outlining the things like, inflation and, insurance and interest rates and all those things that are creating financially challenging times for all of us, but including the council, which also has to cope with these challenges, and we can't just stop. Thank you. So the answer to the numbers, I guess you'll come back with on the climate change capital program. Yep.
So just to clarify, what you're looking for is the comparison between the designated spend in the last LTP and the designated spend this time in the LTP.
An indication on whether these have been reduced. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now we've got 6 questions left at this stage. I'd like to think we could get to 12 o'clock and have not